Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making a Ravey House song inspired by Disclosure's song, The Observer Effect. We're going to find out if we can do this in under 6 hours by using the 80-20 rule of house music production. What you're listening to right now is a song that we'll be working on. And what you're looking at right now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. What we're going to be doing is going in order of each layer as I actually built it out when I was creating this, so that you can apply this to your own music when you want to create a song like this. So we'll be starting off with the drums, going layer by layer, then moving over into the bass, then the vocals, then all the melodic elements like the synths, and then finally taking the loop that we've created and stretching it out into a full arrangement. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video, because we're doing a full recap of the 80-20 rule so you can apply what you learned in this video to your music as quickly as possible. Because all in all, it only took me about 5 or 6 hours to create this song, and as you can see, it's been mixed, mastered, arranged, and is completely ready to be used in DJ sets or sent out to labels. So finishing songs faster, just like this, is something you'd like help with. I've also made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish a song like this every single week. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab your copy of the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files in the description as well. With that said, let's jump into this. All right. So for this one, I took things in a slightly different direction, and I found it mind-blowing, and it's how I'm going to probably do things going forward, to be honest. So normally what I would do is find the song that I wanted to remake. So in this case, it was just Disclosure Observer Effect tune, and then just start rebuilding it, starting with the drums and making my way up. What I did differently this time is I actually found out which song I wanted to remix first. So in this case, I want to do that Charlie XCX song, Guess, so which kind of sounds a little like this.
Guess the color of my underwear, you wanna...
Super cool track. So this one just came out, and like a day after, I wanted to make a remix of it. And so what I did was I started just listening to this song on like YouTube, and then I started playing through different songs on Beatport that I liked, and playing them at the same time to try to hear if I can hear it actually working. Then once I knew that it sounded pretty good, I dropped the Disclosure track into the my project file here, and then dropped the Charlie XCX song as well, and like isolated the vocal using, I think, La. And then what I did was I just started playing it a little bit like this. Let me kind of show you. I overlapped it with the reference and then played it like this.
Guess the color of my underwear, you wanna know what I got going on down there.
So I basically found a spot in the reference track where there was no vocal or anything in the way, and then overlapped the vocal so that I could hear for sure that it sounded pretty good and pretty close. This way, when I started to actually build out the track, I had the confidence to know that it was actually going to sound good. And I really loved that workflow working forward like this, because then, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it happens to me quite a bit, where you're working on a track and then maybe halfway through, okay, I need to get like a hook on this, and then you create like a lead melody, or you throw a vocal on top, and you're kind of trying to mash it together, and it maybe doesn't work so well, and you're just going forward because you spent so much time on it already, and it can get a little frustrating. Sometimes magic can happen, but sometimes it's really forced. This way, knowing that like the final hook works with like the reference that I want to be going with, made it so much more fun and made the whole process a lot more confident as I was going through it. So once I had that confidence with this track, the next thing I did was I dropped the reference in here, like as you can see it, and set it up to flick it back and forth. So if you want to learn how to do that, there's a video in the playlist. There's a playlist link in the description that will show you how to set up the reference track properly. It also shows you how to set up the arrangement track. So what I'll do is I'll add these little MIDI clips that are following the song a little bit. That way I can visually see all the different points in the song. And then I added these little location markers to show just like changes in energy as I was working through the song. This way, then what you can do is when you're building up the drums, you can build the drums in the intro area, knowing that there's just drums there. Then when you're adding in the bass, you go over to where just the sub is. When you're doing the drop, you go over to where the drop is. And it helps it when you're building out the song in this like methodical, nice way. So definitely check out the link in the description for that playlist there. But once I had that all set up, so the references in here, I have the arrangement matched out. And also I should mention, when you have the arrangement matched out like this, you can create like a super loop. So you create like the full sounding 8 or 16 bar loop. And then it makes it so easy to stretch it out into a full arrangement because you have like a proper arrangement up here. So once that's all set up and I knew that I had the hook in here nicely and it was going to work nicely against the song, the next thing that I did was I started to work on the drums. So first things first, let's just have a listen to the drums by themselves. Cool, so sounding pretty sick. So let's go over how I built this out layer by layer so you can kind of follow along here. So always the first thing that I'll get done is the kick drum, kind of the most fundamental part of the drums, and especially in dance music, and it really drives the song forward. So getting that down correctly nice first really sets a good foundation. So that's usually how I start things off. So let's have a listen to that kick by itself. Boom. So it sounds pretty sick. So if we have a look at the kick, it's like a nice big boomy kick. And what I have going on here, if we have a look at the pattern first, it's just a classic 4 on the floor here. And then at the end, there's this little extra little fill. So if we look at it as well as listen, the do at the end there. And so what you can see here is I'm layering 2 different kicks. So if we have a look, one of the kicks is actually, I sampled it from the track here. So I just stole a piece of it, threw it in here to this little rack that I have. And then I used the similar sound feature to find something that sounds similar. And so basically, once you extract a kick in Ableton, you can show it in the Finder, and then Ableton will find sounds that are similar to that. And the idea is to build up a little library of similar sounds so you can flick back and forth and figure out which one is the best. Again, that playlist link has a full rundown on how to do that. It's a little bit more in depth, so definitely check that out. But basically, the idea is you can extract the kick from a song and then use the similar sound feature to find sounds in your library that are very close to that. And then you can also layer them as well. Show you how to do that in that video. And we're just running it through a little bit of drum bus, adding a little saturation, and the main thing is adding in this boom. So if we listen to it without this drum bus, and then with, it adds like a bit more low-end fullness and makes it sound a little bit more professional in my opinion. And then other than that, I have this EQ8, and if you can see here, the red dot, we're just using this to automate just removing the lows in it as like a transition trick. Once the kick is down correctly, the main thing is, so first getting the right pattern, then selecting the right sound. And then after that, really the main thing is getting the right volumes. So basically the idea is to be playing the song, flicking between the reference and what you have here, and then adjusting the volume so that it's similar. So if you have the right pattern, if you have the right sound, and you have the right volume, you're pretty much, that's going to be like the 80-20 rule right there. So then the next idea is to simply start building out the drums in terms of kind of what you're hearing next. So when I was listening to the reference, the next most powerful contributing factor that I heard was the clap. So let's have a listen to the clap that I added in here. And the reference. So if we have a look at the pattern, always pattern first, it's just a classic 4 on the floor pattern, and the template that I use has it set up so that these notes are already in place. The snares, positions of the snares like this, the claps like this, also some of the hi-hats, and even the kicks are always in the same place. So I've set up my template so these notes are already here. Again, there's another video in that playlist if you want to head over to the description where it shows you the template that I have and these little how to set it up like this so that you're ready to go and you're not punching in notes that you're going to always be punching in. So as you can see here, it is again the classic snare sound. So all I had to do was grab these and then move between my clap sounds in my little library that I've prepared here until I found something that sounded similar. So then if we have a look, I ended up just finding this sample here. And again, in that video where I showed the template, the idea is to build out a little tiny library of clap sounds that you like. That way you're not looking through 100 each time. You're just looking through, in this case, it was just 8, which is really nice. In terms of any processing, I'm just running it through the standard little channel strip that I have here. So it's very small moves that are made. So removing a bunch of the lows, making room so that's just like the bass and the kick takes care of that. We're using this transient designer here. And this is a free plugin. It just tightens up I use mostly to tighten up the sound. So you can see the sustain, I'm bringing it down to make the clap sound tighter. We're using a little bit of Ableton saturation. Again, just the idea here is to map main knobs or main controls of VSTs or plugins to these little macro knobs. That way you're just using your ear to quickly mix and move on. Again, if you want a rundown of this, that template video shows you this channel strip in a bit more detail and how everything works specifically. But main thing here, after listening through that clap, again, you get the notes down correctly, you choose the right sound, and then it's all about just getting the volume correct. If we listen to ours, I think ours sounds too loud, so I would bring this down maybe a decibel or two to try to match it. But as you're building out the track, I always recommend like starting using the reference to like get it as close as possible, but then along the way take creative liberty. So in this instance, I wanted the clap to sound louder, so I made it a little bit louder. There's definitely no harm in that. So then listening to the reference, if we have the kick and we have the clap, the next thing is definitely those closed hi-hats. So let's have a listen to what I added in here, and I'll look at it as well. So with this one, the main thing here is it was a pretty cool, unique, shuffly kind of sound. I do have this set up so that like this offbeat bit here, usually the closed hats and the open hats, they're always on this offbeat like this. And so I have this template set up to automatically be like that. So when I jump in here, it's just a matter of adjusting it and kind of adding in the extra little shuffly notes. So what I was kind of hearing was like a little bit of a tambourine sound and this hi-hat sound here. I think what I did do is similar to the kick drum. I found like a little slice of just the hat, as you can see here, and use the similar sound function that I mentioned in that kick stealing video that is in the playlist to find some hi-hat sounds that are similar. The ones, if you just to show you what it kind of looks like from this point down here, like these ones are the hats that I always have selected, and then I use the similar sound function to find these additional ones here. So there's just more to work with, and the idea is you can select them like this, and as you can move them up and down to decide if that's the right sound. If you're just using one, you can also use the selector to automatically move the notes as well. The idea is just this cool little shuffly thing. I'd really just flick back and forth between the reference here and what I had here to try to find the right kind of rhythm there. And then there's this cool little open hi-hat at the end of it. So finding the right notes, finding the right sounds, and then once again, just dialing in the volume. There's a little bit of this mix as you go stuff going on here. So the idea is by having a channel strip set up like this, like I mentioned, you can quickly make these mixing moves and move on quickly so it's sounding as professional as possible as you're building out each element. So removing some of those, removing some of the attack so that it's not hitting as hard, and then tightening up the sustain, leaving the sustain alone, adding a little saturation to make it sound a little fuller and a little grittier. But main thing is the volumes is going to be the main thing there. Next thing I added in it's more part of the arrangement. So at a certain point here, this open hi-hat comes in. So let's take a listen to the reference. Kind of like shakery open hi-hat sound. So let's have a listen to what I created and have a look at the pattern as well. So main thing is, again, this is kind of that open hi-hat pattern. So it's like on the offbeat here. And so that was already set up, and that way I could just grab it, press Option, and then duplicate it if I needed to layer it. And we have three, so that's a look at the pattern in terms of the sounds. What we have is an open hat sound that I like, just tightened up a ton so that it's not ringing out much. And then I use this extraction thing, so I froze a bit of the open hi-hat, maybe this one here that plays at the end, and then just threw it into this little rack where I can shape it a little bit. And again, this is all in the project files if you want to grab it, and you could reuse this yourself. So I actually layered in a sample from the actual tune, and then use the similar sound function to layer in something else. So these are the individual sounds here. You can hear there's like almost a little bit of the bass guitar coming in there, which is not great, but it works in context. So then once we have the pattern, now we have the sound, and then a little bit of mix as you go. So we're just removing some of the lows. That's really it. And the main thing is the volumes. That's the main thing there. So just listening back and forth, reference, and what we have here. Cool. Then let's move on to the next element, which I added in these additional snares here. So let's have a listen to the reference. Oops, sorry. Let's have a listen to the reference. So right here, you're just listening for this almost like the snare fill right here. And then let's have a listen to what we have. There. So let's have a listen to it fully. That's all the snares adding. Right there. It's just a little cool little fill that's added to increase the energy over time. You can see the drums here. It's very much new layers are being added throughout the track. Very cool house kind of thing to do, slowly increasing the energy. So basically just figured out what the pattern was. It was just like where it was, just flicking back and forth. Then used this snare rack that I have. So it's a bunch of snare sounds that I like. It's a very minor sound, so I didn't take too long to kind of get it perfect. And then a little bit of mix as you go. So we're just removing some of the lows, tightening up the sustain a little bit so it's not ringing out as much. And then just nailing the level. So really the main thing. Then the next thing gets added in is a series of drum breaks. And so this is something I like to do as well in these tunes, is start off with the core sounds. So get your kick down in like MIDI like this. Get your claps, hats, open hats, snares. And then that's kind of your core sounds, really driving the drum sound. Then you can start layering in drum breaks and different like percussive breaks and stuff like that in a subtle way to kind of add some extra grit and character to the song. So let's have a look at this first break that we added. And let's have a listen to it on its own. Really cool sounding break. So I think I just typed in house breaks into Ableton, dropped it in here with the warp marker set to beats and on transients. If you switch it from what it's normally at to the arrow pointing to the right, you can tighten this up like this, and it's going to reduce the transients and make the sound a lot tighter. So if we listen to it like this and then full, you hear all that drums. Let's remove it. So you remove like that sustained part of the drum break, and it makes it a lot tighter and helps it blend in with your core sounds a lot more. So that's a big tip there. Main thing is finding a cool sound, and then we're just removing some of the lows and then using this one knob sidechain that I haven't shown yet, but it's just this Ableton shaper device going to quarter notes, which is what the kick is usually hitting, and then just ducking a volume. This way you can do a one knob sidechain instead of having to throw a compressor and dial in the compressor and then route it to the kick and all that stupid stuff. Or not stupid, I find it slows me down and I don't like doing it. And then other than that, there's just a small little ride loop here that gets that in, which is just a cool loop that I have from something, maybe a remix competition or something. And it's just dialed in terms of the volume. We have a little bit of sidechain using this width plugin that I like a lot. Also free, Polyverse Wider, completely free. I've just mapped that like wide width knob to the to an Ableton rack here, so that I don't have to open up the plugin all the time and do anything like that. So it's just pushing it to the left and right, making it more stereo, leaving space in the middle for everything else. And then the last thing that's being added here is this drum loop right here. So let's have a listen. Play it by itself. And then in context. And so we're doing that tighten up little trick here. Let's see if we're doing anything crazy here. We are removing some of the lows. There's one point in the song where I added this little flanger bit to kind of make it as like more like a little effect transition. It's not on the whole time. Little sidechain, so pumping and making room for the kick, and a little bit of width to like push left and right. And that is a pretty good look here at the drums for this one. All right, so with the drums out of the way, the next element that I always usually like to work on is the bass. And that's because the bass really, also similar to the drums, really carries a lot of the sound, particularly in dance music like this. It's like really the drums and the bass really gets people moving and dancing, so I feel like it's the most important thing. It also just starts to like set in place the melodic foundations of the track, so you can build everything else around the chord progressions and the sound of the bass. So let's have a listen to the bass that we added here. Let me turn it on. So that's listen to it. And so for the pattern, what I did was the audio to MIDI conversion trick. So basically you can grab a slice of the song where the bass is playing by itself, drag it into a MIDI clip, and it'll do its best to convert that audio to MIDI. If you want to see a look at that in more detail, there is a bass grouping system video in that playlist that I mentioned, which is in the description, that goes into more detail of how that works, as well as this whole bass system that I have here. So you'll notice a couple cool things about this. So first off is I always break it down into the sub, and then the mid bass after. And so again, a more detailed look of how this is technically set up is in that video in that playlist there. The idea is to do the sub first. It's a nice clean sound, and that way you can really focus on making sure that the notes you selected are correct, similar to writing like something with a bass guitar or like a acoustic guitar or a piano. And then also you're setting up making sure you're dialing in that low end first before worrying about the character of the sub. And I find that's a really interesting and effective way for me to be working. So we're just using the V sub, this little thing that I've a basic sub sound that I've created. Again, more info in that video. And if you want to just grab the project files, you can steal this as well. It's just using Ableton's operator. Nice clean bass sound. And then basically what I did was I just adjusted like the pattern to do some kind of combination between what's the pattern in Observer effect and what the pattern is in that Charlie XCX song. So it's just very similar, but like some slight differences. But the real interesting thing I think here is this mid bass sound. So if we have a listen to it, that higher bit, squelchiness. And so what I did here is I'm using something called Synplant. And basically what you can do, I don't want to update it right now, is you can, very similar to how with the drums, using the similar sound feature to find a sample that sounds similar. This program, you can drag a sample in here and it'll use AI to create a patch that sounds somewhat similar. So basically what I did was I found a section in the song where the bass was playing by itself, dragged it into Synplant there, and then it got like this interesting sound that's kind of similar. Then what I did is just throughout the song, there's a lot of automation. I won't go too into detail here, but you can see throughout the song, there's a lot of like rising of the sound, tightening up of the sound, just a lot of changing throughout the song, which is really cool. And then in terms of any other processing, using this roar preset to make it sound a little bit more intense, lowering getting rid of some of the lows because we want the subs to come through in the other channel, tightening up the sustain, some of the one knob sidechain that I mentioned, a little bit of width on this mid bass sound, so it's pushed left to the right, so the subs in the middle and the mid bass is the left and right. And then the main thing really is then again, flicking back and forth between this and the reference, trying to get something similar. And then usually at this point, this is a good point to, the drums can always sound pretty similar, I think, to the reference track. Drums are, atonal, and they can have some kind of like hook to them, but they're pretty much just, I don't know, they're just drums, Once you start adding melodic stuff like the bass and everything else that's going to come after it, that's really going to be your time, I think, to start switching directions and starting taking your own creative liberties and making something a bit more unique and going away from the reference track slowly but surely. So you actually have something that you can release and release. So you can hear it's a little bit different, but still in the same spirit. Once that was done, I wanted to make sure that it was sounding good against the vocals. So let's have a listen to it with the vocals.
Guess the color of my underwear. You wanna know what I got going on?
Sounds fucking sick. Again, that was kind of one of the first steps getting the vocal in, but a little bit look of the processing. I'm using this thing called Nectar. And this is not what I want to use all the time. This is just an experiment in this one. Similar things would be like Track Spacer, but the idea that I did is, I have this melodic group here with synths, and it's listening. This melodic group is listening to the vocal and then ducking the melodic stuff when the vocal appears, just in those frequency ranges to make room for the vocal. So I'll show you a little bit of that in a bit, but it's something new that I've been experimenting with that I've been really liking the results with. But other than that, we're just moving some of the lows, adding some sidechain, mostly for kind of that cool pumping dancing effect, very subtle, and making room for the kick in some way as well. A little bit of saturation to fill it out. And then using this compressor device here with the magic setting, it kind of listens to the signal and will adjust it based on like what you select. So vocals, like light compression, and it'll adjust it for you. So I find that useful because I don't really know this that well yet, to be honest, and I just want the result. That's a look at the volume. And then again, the main thing would be volume, but since there's no there is no vocal in the reference track, kind of gotta do it by like your own taste there. And then the next thing that added in was this melodic stuff here. So I cut up this little bit here. Let's just listen to it. I'm gonna turn off the vocal, and then I solo it. I think it's Billie Eilish like kind of giggling as part of the song. I just thought it sounded cool to add in as like a little layer there. And then let's move along. Next thing is this here. Oh, this is mostly this. So let me show you this part. So in the build up, this is the thing here. So it's this cool like ravey stabby thing. So if you listen to the reference, right over here, and what we have. So it's similar. It's definitely not the same. Mine's a little bit like more intense, I guess you could say. The way that I got this was I just looked up a rave stab sample and splice and just cut it into the same pattern. So it's going very similar to the bass. If we look at this compared, it's very similar. I'll show you. There we go. So you can see the hits lining up here, lining up here, lining up here, and then sometimes it just like it falls off a little bit, so it sounds a little bit more of like kind of a call and response. Main thing was just finding a cool sample on splice, and then I have this little spectral resonator thing. I could show you what that sounds like. That's like similar to the idea of that bass changing throughout the course of the track. I wanted this to change as well, so we have a listen to it. Solo it. You can see over here, really pay attention to right here, the decay going up. So that's an interesting way to kind of, like in the actual Observer Effects song, they're obviously using a synth and they're just playing with like the release or the decay, stuff like that. In the actual synth to make the song like swell up like that. Instead of making it tighter. A cool way that I found to get around that, if you like using samples like I do, you can use a spectral resonator and you can increase the decay time, and it's going to kind of open up the sound a bit more in a really cool way. Really love doing that. We're just removing some lows, removing some of the highs. Reverb comes in at a certain point, a little side chain for the ducking there. That's really it. And the last thing was this little bubble that I heard being added to the song. And so what this is a little bubble sample that I guess I found. Oh no, this is actually a little bit of the, I wonder what it is. It's a little bit of I think Charlie or Billy saying something, and then just put a lot of weird shit on top. So I have this little shaper box thing, bubble adder, because I was trying to make that bubble sound that you can hear in the reference. Removing some of the lows, using this echo distortion thing from Roar, a little side chain so it's pumping, saturation to bring it out a bit, K-clip to control the volume, and then a little bit of this width plugin to push to the left and right. And then other than that, that's really a look at it. The main thing after that is I always would recommend building out a super loop. So like somewhere maybe over here. Oh. There. So getting to this point where you've built out as many of the layers as possible vertically, and then what you can simply do is like copy and paste it across the whole track, and then just like use your arrangement markers that you did at the beginning to decide what's going to be at certain points. So like, and then also flicking back and forth the reference. So if we go to the intro here and listen to what's playing here, you can just mute everything other than what's playing there. The bass comes in here, so then you add in the bass here. A hi-hat gets added here, so you add in the hi-hat here. And you can just work your way through it just like this. That's kind of the main thing. And that way you can quickly get an arrangement by just copying the arrangement track here. And I'd like listening back and forth to the reference. Once you have that done, that's going to be kind of like the main arrangement. Then what I like to do is add all these little effects here. So little things like this. I really like these like reverse. Is this work? Should be right here. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, I said auto for some reason. There. So like little reverse crashes and then crashes, just little things like that to, there we go. Right here. Find those to be super useful, or like at the beginning of sections, a crash like this. And then for even extra, like this sounds awesome all the time, a reverse crash into a crash. Really shows the listener that a new section's happening and keeps things like slightly moving and evolving throughout the track. Then adding in extra little things like these little white noises, risers, little things like that. And the idea is I consider these like micro transitions So you want to have these every like 8 bars, every 16 bars or so, as extra little ways to kind of keep the listener interested and like signal to the listener that new sections of the song are coming. And so this is like kind of like third and final step there. And that way you can build out an arrangement that sounds a little bit more interesting with these little bits of ear candy here. But I think that's a pretty good look at it. If you want to check out the project file, you can have a much deeper look at the arrangement here and when things are coming in and out and all the different automation points. That'd probably be the best way. It's very much modeled after the actual song with some, of course, creative liberties happening.
Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention to this super long video, then you've probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your songs. The goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, and effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule here is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're very easily hitting 80% of a high quality, professionally made song. In particular, we use that reference track to make sure that we're picking the right notes, sounds, and volumes as we're building out our song. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume of each track, as well as using a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our songs. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and have a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one-knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist filled with videos just like the one you just watched, where I completely create songs inspired by tracks found in the Beatport top charts. Or if you really want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, make sure you check out this video right here.